In the last 3 decades, I have been first a student of development communication, then an observer, and later a practitioner. I was heavily involved with community radio. I'm still involved with community radio. But I must admit that I am not any more enlightened about development communication today than I was 30 years ago. Because it's a question of really what is development. So what I would do is I will take some ideas from the Buddhist teachings and relate it to modern society and development trends. So the question is, what is development? Development discourse in Asia started around the middle of the 20th century, when many countries began to be liberated from European colonial rule. So therefore, we first need to understand what is colonialism. If I put it simply, it was the occupation of somebody else's land, robbing its natural and physical wealth, and enslave its people to make the occupying power richer. That is how most of Europe became developed as we know it today, and Asia became poor or underdeveloped. When the post-colonial countries, especially in the 1960s and 70s, began its development process, we had no other model to emulate rather than the European model. So we took the European model of development as a yardstick, and development and modernization was seen as the process by which individuals change from a traditional way of life to a more complex, technology-driven, and rapidly changing style of life. So tradition became old-fashioned, modernization became consumer-driven, which is promoted by greed, craving, and it's a changing lifestyle which is impermanent. The East was supposed to embrace the West's wisdom and therefore, and discard their Eastern mythologies. The West have this word for Eastern philosophies, often they use this word Eastern mythology. By the end of the 20th century, planet was becoming warmer, and natural calamities were increasing. And meanwhile, the Asians have almost fully embraced the Western economic wisdom, and they were beginning to consume the way the West has been doing for a while. Suddenly, the development communicators in the West and also in the East have begun to realize that this model of development cannot work. It is not sustainable, and humankind is galloping towards disaster. So on the 25th of September last year, the United Nations adopted what is called the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, these are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals which were adopted, which is supposed to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all. One of the key principles of Buddhist teachings is what is called Praticca Samuppada, or dependent originations, which says that all things and phenomena as interdependent. And you will see it is clearly consistent with what you see in that list. You will see the dependencies from one goal to the other. So today, in the second decade of the 21st century, the so-called Eastern mythology is becoming modern wisdom, because mindfulness is today the biggest fad sweeping across America right at the moment. We in the East have known this for the last 25 centuries as Vipassana Bhavana, to be mindful of your actions and the effects of it. We need to understand the causes of poverty, because poverty lies at the very root of it. So what is poverty? Let's look at the Four Noble Truths that is at the very root of Buddhist teachings. So the first noble truth is dukkha, suffering or dissatisfaction. So you need to comprehend what is suffering, what is dukkha, and know the location of the problem. So what is poverty? Poverty basically is suffering for many people. almost everyone who lives under it. And it's not only the people who are living under poverty, but it also have effects on rest of society as well. Then you come to the second noble truth, which is samudra, the cause or origins of dissatisfaction of suffering. So we need to look at how can we eradicate the cause of that suffering. We need to diagnose the origins of poverty or suffering. Then we come to Nirodha, the cessation of existence of suffering. So we need to realize the cessation of suffering and look at what would be the solution. That's where development communicators come in, and the marga, or the path leading to the cessation of dissatisfaction or suffering. So the path leading to eradication of this suffering or poverty is the role where development communicators have to play. But they need to understand the roots of poverty before they could communicate a path leading to it. Or how can we relate the Four Noble Truths to the causes of underdevelopment or poverty? So if you look at the origins of poverty, is it wrong government policies that are contributing to poverty? Or is it exploitation of the poor by the more powerful? Or is it unjust economic and trade regimes that are negotiated and implemented? Or is it corruption, which is the ultimate manifestation of greed or craving? Very often it's all of them or many of them. So the role of development communicator is to understand all this, be mindful of the situation on the ground, and set about in encouraging or advocating policies that will lead to the eradication of poverty and suffering. That would lead you to practice compassion and loving kindness. So the Noble Eightfold Path advocates 8 steps to eradicate suffering. These are the Panya or wisdom dimensions of Buddhism. It includes right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, and right mindfulness. First, we need to understand how poverty is created and continues to exist. We cannot just dismiss it because we are comfortable in our middle-class lifestyles and say, oh, these people are lazy, uneducated, or they're drug addicts or criminals. If that is so, we need to think and investigate why it is so. That leads to right thought. Once we understand true right thought, our new Panya, wisdom, will lead as a communicator to right speech and right action. So the Panya, wisdom, we develop as a result of it. But as a communicator, we can encourage right speech and right action. So communication would not be merely directed at the people who are suffering under poverty, but also to those who are making them to suffer, such as unsympathetic or corrupt governing systems, or those nasty, greedy business people who exploit the poor, and their only concern is to make money. So how can we make governments honest and business people compassionate and less greedy? Should we promote and invest in social businesses rather than in stock markets? Also communicating to the poor opportunities available after we have understood the problems and communicating them mindfully, the sustainable development options may motivate these people to take positive action to improve their livelihood. At this stage, as development communicator, I would not advocate that we merely communicate with the rich and the well-to-do, to have some compassion towards the poor and donate money, clothes, or whatever to them. Yes, metta and dana are important elements of Buddhist practices. But as a development communicator, I would be mindful of the fact that these are merely band-aid. We have to communicate to eradicate what Thai Buddhist scholar Sulak Sivaraksa calls structural violence of our economic system. We need to be mindful of the fact that much of our global media networks, as well as local ones, are owned and are controlled by arms manufacturers, oil companies, and those who benefit from the branding label culture that is promoted by the media. Basically, what we call the commercial media is promoting craving. So it is in their interest to have large reservoir of poor living under poverty to be exploited. We rightly condemn slavery practiced by Europeans 300 years ago. But today we have a system of modern day slavery that is practiced mainly by Asians and Arabs that we call labor migration. So this is what I suppose what Sulak calls structural violence of the system. Now, this is a story which I did 20 years ago from Sri Lanka. I was in Australia at that moment. I was working for Interpress Service News Agency as its Australian and the South Pacific correspondent. And I saw in the Australian newspaper just one paragraph, 2 or 3 sentences. 11 rice farmers have committed suicide in a place called Polonnaruwa in Sri Lanka. That's just one paragraph. So anybody reading it in Australia would think, oh, these farmers have nothing else to do than killing themselves. But I knew at the time, this was during the regime of Chandrika Bandaranaike, Sri Lanka has just signed an agreement with IMF, what is called a structural adjustment policy, which was cutting most of the government subsidies. So a month later, I was planning to go to Sri Lanka on a holiday, but I offered to the news agency that I would write an article. I will go to Polonnaruwa, talk to the farmers, and write an article from their perspective. So when I went there, I spent 3 days there. I also got hold of a local organization which introduced me to farmers. Even on a Sunday morning, I attended a meeting of the farmers, about 3 hours. They were discussing the problem. Then I found, yes, it was correct. It was a structural adjustment policy where the government has cut subsidies, fuel subsidies to farmers. They have cut low-interest loans to farmers. They have closed the paddy purchasing centers in the rural areas where the government was buying rice at a guaranteed price from the farmers. And what has happened is the farmers have had to go to money lenders to borrow money. And these money lenders happen to be the people who buy the paddy and sell it as well. So what they do is they lend the money to the farmers at, of course, a higher interest than the state bank used to do. And then just before the rice harvest, they dump the market with rice and bring down the price of paddy. So they buy the paddy at a lower rate. So the farmers find that the income they get from the harvest is not enough to pay off the debts. And that's the reason for the suicides. And this was 25 years ago, but this is still happening across Asia. Going back to that Four Noble Truths, the importance of understanding the reason for suffering. If you understand the reasons for suffering, as a development communicator, you can communicate the message both to policymakers as well as to the population at large. This was widely published across Asia and even in Africa, because the maize farmers in Africa were facing the same problem. What Sulak argues, and he has been arguing this for the last 20 years, I've heard him talking about this, about structural violence in the system. And one of the things he often points out is IMF's structural adjustment programs. But I can't see Buddhist organizations, even Buddhist charities, talking about these issues. There are Catholic charities which talk about it, but you don't find Buddhist charities talking about these issues. In fact, the current Pope Francis talks about these issues. Actually, I'm becoming a fan of his ideas on development. But why can't we Buddhists talk about these issues? We can interpret it from the Buddhist teachings. And because it's important that we develop this panya and be able to make a contribution towards how development policies can be adjusted so that we don't promote the culture of craving.